We are live, Black Belt Magazine. Welcome to episode 80 of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and we are doing a Diamond Nationals preview episode with seven-time Diamond Ring winner herself, Sammy Smith. We're exactly a week away. A week from right now, Diamond Nationals will be getting underway with the eliminations on Friday night, going on to the elimination Saturday, the runoffs, and then, of course, the coveted diamond rings will be given out at the nighttime finals next Saturday evening. Unfortunately, I have finals week next week, so I will not be competing at Diamonds, but I am going to be flying in Friday evening so that I can watch the competition on Saturday, support my teammates, see my fiancée Gabrielle compete, and have a good time. So I will be there. I just won't be able to actually compete this time around. And that also means no podcast episode next week because I'm going to be studying for med school finals. But that's neither here nor there. What we do have right here is Sammy Smith to talk about Diamonds coming up because I mentioned that she is a seven-time Diamond Ring champion, is going to be trying to tie the record with Nikki Carlson-Lee and Caitlin Michelle of 8 Diamond Rings. Or if she wins double overall Grand Championships, as she has done many times before, she would actually break the record at this Diamonds and stand alone as the winningest Diamond Ring champion in the history of professional sport karate. So, Sammy, with that, how's it going tonight?
Whew, you just put a lot of pressure on me right there, Jackson. I'm doing great. I've been working really hard and training really hard in preparation for this tournament because, as you just said, I kind of have a lot going for me going into this tournament. I'm just going to treat it like any other tournament, but as you mentioned, I could, either tie history or make history. So I would definitely like to make history. So that's kind of been, my goal when I'm training. But other than that, I'm doing great. And I can't, this is different for us. We usually, don't do it live. So I'm really excited to be on the live podcast today.
Absolutely. That's one thing I'm super excited about. Last week, we did an episode live on my personal channel just as a test run. For those of you that didn't know, we typically pre-record these podcasts and then upload them as a premiere, but we're doing it live. I see Alex Reyes of Point Fighter Live already in the comments. Power Baby, how's it going? If you guys have any questions while you're watching this episode of the podcast, drop them in the comments on Facebook, and Sammy and I are going to address those questions as we go. And most of our discussion tonight is going to be focused on the Diamond Nationals. So while we're getting more viewers rolling in here, Sammy, tell us a little bit of your story. Obviously, there's a lot of stories to be told over a career in which you've won 7 of these titles. So just take us through maybe what that first one was like, even before that. I mean, you've been competing forever, it seems like, right? So just tell us that journey throughout. I know it feels, we're what, 23, 25, but we still feel old. 24, right?
Yeah, 24.
Yeah. Anyways, tell us your Diamond story and some of those big highlights.
Okay, well, my Diamond National story actually starts off back in 2005, I believe. That I don't know if that was my first Diamonds or not, but as you guys may know, if you don't know, Charlie Lee Nationals, he had the underbelt. There was no underbelt finals. He had invited me to perform for the Black Belt Night Show, and I, became kind of like the first underbelt to perform on stage, and kind of that's where the whole underbelt finals idea took off from there. But kind of like fast forward, I did that at Charlie Lee Nationals, and then there used to be a tournament from Ken Eubanks, Bluegrass Nationals, that I did my underbelt performance there as well because he wanted me to do pretty much the same thing that I did for Charlie Lee. However, Mr. Larry Carnahan actually wanted me to, I guess, do that a third time at the Diamond Nationals. And for all the new guys like that are just starting to compete or, started not too long ago, Diamond Nationals used to be in this, like, I don't even really remember it too well, but like this super big room with like bleachers, right, that went like around, and like the stage was down and people were like looking down, and like there was so many people. I just remember Matt like always talking about it, like that's the stage you want to be on. You want to be on the US Open stage and you want to be on a Diamond National stage. So it was always my goal to be on the Diamond National stage. However, when I was an underbelt, Mr. Larry Carnahan, he invited me to do the performance again, but I had already made a commitment to go to a local tournament, which now looking back on it was a little bit, frustrating. So we had to fly back, and I couldn't perform on the Diamond National stage. And, me not really knowing anything really how important that was at the time. Again, looking back, it's really frustrating now because, as you guys know, that arena doesn't exist anymore. And I never got a chance to perform on the stage in that setting. So that was a little upsetting. That's kind of where my Diamond National story, starts. It does get better, though. I competed so many times on the Diamond National stage as a junior against you, Jackson, and I always came up a little bit short. So as a junior, I actually never won a diamond ring. But however, in 2015, I guess this is where my story officially starts. I moved up into the adult division. Kind of early. My birthday is late July, so I get to stay in the division a little bit later. But since I already, turned 18, I did have the option to move up for the end of the year. So I did take that option just because, I just wanted to, I was ready to go into the adult division. I was kind of, done with the juniors, and I wanted, more of a challenge. So in 2015, when I was fresh 18, I moved up at Capital Classics, but then, Diamonds. I was already in the adult division, and I did my weapons form first, and I happened to win the diamond ring. I was like, I couldn't believe it, because I just went through my whole history. I have never won a junior division, a junior overall, and I've been on that stage so many times. It felt like surreal to win a diamond ring as an adult and a fresh adult, nonetheless. So. That's kind of where my story started, and I was perfectly fine with that diamond ring. I was content, super happy. And then, a few divisions later, the forms happens, and then boom, again, I won another diamond ring. So I was like, okay, this is crazy. I've never won a diamond ring before. I move up to the adult division. I win not one diamond ring, but I win 2 diamond rings. What is going on? This is a little bit crazy. So I guess, that's kind of where my Diamond Nationals story comes in. I actually have, I don't know if I could move my camera, but I actually have all of my diamond plaques back there, and the blue ones. Oh, I don't know which way the camera is. The blue ones is the first one from 2015. That was my double diamond win right there.
That's awesome. And what a way to introduce yourself to the adult division. And a lot of the new kids on the block in sport karate don't realize this. But to put your career into perspective a little bit, especially those early stages when you were an underbelt, when you were a junior, when I first started competing in 2006, you were already a sport karate superstar. Everybody already knew who Sammy Smith was. And I think you had, that was maybe your second year in the black belt division.
Yeah, I think I moved up 2000, maybe the end of 2005. 2006 was definitely my full first year as a black belt.
Right. And so you were already representing pro rank. You were getting on stage. You were making it to the finals. So everybody knew who Sammy Smith was. And then I was kind of just showing up on the scene and wasn't very good at the time. But then obviously I eventually caught up. And then throughout much of our last couple of years in 13 and under, and then throughout all of 14 to 17, those weapons brands were very consistently myself, you, and Amanda Chen doing traditional, right?
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I want to get into in this show, and we'll just go ahead and dive into it now. Because in the current competition format, right, the girls and the boys don't compete against each other in the juniors, which reflects what happens in the adult division. Obviously, with grown adults, they separate the men and the women, just like in any other professional sport. But the way it used to be was that in the juniors, the guys and the girls still competed against each other. So you and your peers, like Mackenzie and others, competed against me and my peers, myself, Cole Presley, Austin Crane, Tyler Weaver, so on and so forth, right? And I have a theory that part of the reason that you and Mackenzie in particular became what you guys became and would go on to dominate the women's division together and have that legendary rivalry between the two of you was because you were always having to train so hard to go up against the guys division as well. That, in my opinion, that helped shape you guys, and that goes both ways. When I got through my runoff and I beat all those guys in the runoff, I still had to find a way to beat you and Amanda on stage. So it's not like it was just the guys pushing the girls. You guys were pushing me too, and you even got me a few times in weapons. You know what I'm saying? talk a little bit about that. Do you think that overall grands for the juniors should go back to how it used to be, where it's boys and girls against each other for that reason?
Absolutely, yes. If there is one thing that I would like to see go back to the way that it was, put the boys and the girls together, because exactly you pretty much hit the nail on the head there, Jackson. You and I also would go against Danny. Don't get me wrong, being in the girls division, it's hard to get out of the division, firstly, but after you go through that and then you go through the runoffs and then you have to go on stage and now you're against fresh people that you didn't even compete against in a division, it definitely, pushes you. And, me being super into tricks, when I was little, with Danny throwing double folds, it was nothing in the overalls, it definitely pushed me to try different tricks that I definitely don't think I would have if it was just, if I was the top girl tricker, having him be this super great tricker forced me to learn how to do corkscrews to split, gainers to split, hyper folds, all these crazy tricks that you don't really see a lot of the girls doing. So I definitely feel like my tricks progressed because of competitors like Danny, and then you forced me to get better at my releases and my spinning manipulations. And I'm just trying to combine everything into my routine. So I definitely think that competing against the boys, not to mention, I also think it's scientifically proven that boys have a little bit more power than girls. So it did push me to try to hit as hard as I could. And I think that's something that stands out about me nowadays, that I would like to see a little bit more girls actually hitting like a boy. I always tell my girl students, you got to imagine that you're hitting like a boy, and I mean that in a good way, because it's going to force you to generate that power, because that's really the only way that you can keep up. So I definitely feel like it's kind of taking a little of the easy way out with just the girls competing against each other and the boys separated. I definitely do think it's a good mix to bring everybody back together.
For sure. And you bring up an excellent point that in some ways it shaped your style, because I think that is one of the things that you're most well known for, is how hard you throw your techniques, whether it's nunchuck strikes, the kicks and your tricking, or your hand combos and CMX forms. The power that you use is unlike what we've seen really in the women's division before. And this whole idea of splitting the girls and the guys makes for an even more compelling historical context when you look at the history of the diamonds. Because there wasn't a separate adult women's weapons diamond ring until it was within the past decade, I'm pretty sure. I think there's only a handful of women that have won the weapons ring. I think it's yourself, Jenny Espina, Caitlin, and I think Kinsey got one, right? But I think it's only in a decade, there's only been 4 or so that have won specifically a women's ring. Before that, there were very few women that had ever won one, because the adults were combined into men and women. Ming Lu got one, and I think she got a couple of them back in the day. And I don't recall off the top of my head any of the other women that would have won weapons rings in the past. But anyway, this whole idea of, do you split the juniors? Obviously, I still think you should split the adults. To me, that makes sense. But in the juniors, I say keep them together. You can also get into the whole debate of if the adult men's traditional is split into 2 grands, right? One for the CMX and the traditional forms are split. CMX traditional weapons are split for men, but women, CMX and traditional still compete against each other. So it's you got to pick one or the other. Either keep them both together or keep them both separate. I personally think it's both separate, but that's another story for another time, right? We'll cover that in a future episode. So jumping back to some diamond-specific talk, Philip Brunet chimed in with a question I actually wanted to ask regardless. So we talk about those 7 rings, and while we're still being retrospective here, what's your favorite of those 7 rings? Was it the first one just because you finally broke through that barrier, or was there one that had some special significance?
I feel like I kind of already answered this question already. Sorry, guys. But yes, the first one has been my favorite one so far. I'm hoping that changes next week. But as of right now, for, looking back in the past, the first one was my favorite one, just because it was so kind of unexpected. And I feel like I had a lot going against me as being the underdog. I was at the top junior, but then as soon as you go back into the adults, you kind of go into this underdog type of label, I guess. So that was me coming into the division that people were already in. So I was just trying to put on a good performance. It was very unexpected. So the first one was definitely, I felt like, it was kind of like a long time coming. Like I felt like that was like yes, I made it. I have my first diamond ring. So definitely the first one has been my favorite.
For sure. Now, since the first one, that's kind of an obvious choice, right? Is there another one after that you particularly loved the form that you ran, or you felt like the division was particularly stacked? Anything like that, just like one of them across the 7 that you're like, yeah, the first one's my favorite, but this one, I was on fire. Something like that, you know what I mean?
I don't remember all my forms, if we're being honest, and I won from diamonds. However, I do believe in 2017, yes, pretty sure. The open form that I ran was probably the hardest form that I ran out of all the diamond rings that I've won, just because there was I remember my first trick pass being like a super long, like one of those like circle combos. And then I had a gainer split in my form, like around a flash kick, and a lot of like hard hitting combos with my hands. So that was definitely like a well thought out form and a very hard form. So I'm glad that, that kind of like paid off. So if there was a second one, I would say it was the one from 2017, my open hand form.
And I like the way you put that. You described it as a well thought out form. And this is something I bring up on the podcast all the time because I don't feel it gets talked about enough in a forms and weapons context. Strategy is obviously apparent in point fighting, right? It's a human chess match. But strategy is often overlooked as an essential part of the game in forms and weapons. The moves that you decide to put in the form, where you decide to put them, the timing in which you throw them. Do you put it in division? Do you save it for stage? Do you wait and see if there's a runoff? Throw it in. There's a lot that goes into, for the top competitors, deciding when you're going to do certain things and when you need certain things, right? And that brings me to the next question I wanted to ask about adjustments. Because I think there's this really interesting parallelism that you're experiencing right now as you move from kind of one epic rivalry that you had throughout much of the last decade with Mackenzie Emery, where you two were going at it in forms and weapons, right? Now Mackenzie seems to have moved on. She's off in the stunts world, right? I think she still coaches and all that, but primarily has moved on to the stunts world. And we have this newest member of Team Paul Mitchell, brand new to the adult division, Haley Glass, who has introduced herself, right? And so you go from a great comma competitor who also does great CMX forms and happens to do a traditional sword routine to another great CMX forms competitor who happens to do commas and a traditional sword routine, right? And so when you look at the situation you're going to have yourself facing in the CMX divisions in particular, because in Grands you'll have the traditional factor as well, and it's different. But for the CMX divisions, does the strategy change much when you game plan for Mackenzie compared to Haley, or do you look at it in a completely different light than that?
Jackson, I can't give my secrets away on Facebook Live, but 1 week before the tournament. I'm just kidding. Well, it's not necessarily like, okay, how I go into tournaments is my forms don't really change much, if we're being honest. Like what I do in the division is probably what I'm planning on doing if we have to do a runoff during the day and then again on stage. However, I always do have a few moves in my back pocket that I don't, give away right away, just in case I need them. I have some upgrades to my trick combos or my landings, if I'm going to stick them to my feet or if I'm going to stick it to a split. I don't know. We'll find out. But as far as, adjustments go, I pretty much just stick to the plan because I my whole motto, all my competition career has been to be consistent. And I feel like you could be the most consistent when you practice one way and you perform one way. I feel like a lot of people that just change their form kind of last minute. I don't think that I would be able to do that unless you're trying to play it safe and let's just say all of your competition drops. For me, there's no reason why I would go and throw some hard releases and just in case I ended up dropping. And then I would just, just play it safe and not do any releases. So that's really the only time that my form adjusts. I do something different. But yeah, pretty much the whole entire time I have the same exact form throughout the whole entire tournament. But however, you are very correct when you're talking about strategy. And I feel like whenever I put together my forms, I'm not just throwing any trick anywhere. I'm thinking about, okay, well, how does this first combo affect what I'm going to do in my second section? And then what should I do for my corner pass? Because I know I'm going to be like a little bit tired by that point, but it still has to be impressive. What release am I putting in the beginning of my form versus the end? What I think I could hit more, what I think is more impressive to the crowd, what I think the judges would appreciate more. So there's a lot that goes on to, putting together, as I would call a perfect form. And it's just not, you just don't do anything just to do things. You really have to think it out. And that's kind of like behind the scenes, but that's part of what being a champion is. If you could kind of figure out that puzzle piece within your forms.
Absolutely. The way I look at it is it's preparatory strategy as well as game day strategy, right? So what you're focusing on more so is your preparatory strategy. Before you ever show up at the event, the way the form is choreographed, knowing what you're going to throw, where you're going to throw it, how you're going to put the moves together, so that when you show up tournament day, all you have to do is execute. I've always been more of a game day strategist where I'll have a general idea of 3 or 4 different things that I could do, and then I'll sit back and watch the division, right? I'll see how the draw goes. If I'm going before some of my top competitors, I'm probably going to throw everything I've got because that's going to put more pressure on them to have to hit everything they've got, and chances are not all of them are going to be able to do that, and then you're having to compete against 1 or 2 instead of 3 or 4. Right? Or if I get a later draw, then I'll watch and see. And if everybody looks good, I throw more. And if people don't look so good that day, I throw less. Right? And so when we talk about strategy, each competitor can have a different way they go about it. There's not like one winning formula like, oh, well, this is like in football, the Patriot way. Right? There's not this one strategy that we know is going to win you however many titles, but it's whatever works for you as the competitor. Right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess that's where we become a little bit different there. I didn't know that. But yeah, you're right. Everyone has their own different strategy of preparing and what they do tournament time. But yeah, I didn't know that, Jackson.
And for those of you tuning in, I know we're on the Black Belt Magazine page tonight, so we have a mixed audience. Some people that know sport karate really well and know Sammy and I really well. If you guys have specific in-depth questions about sport karate and about diamonds, maybe you want to hear some of our predictions, we're going to get to that by the end of the show. Drop those down in the comments below. Or if you're somebody just, regular fan of Black Belt Magazine, loves martial arts in general, but you don't know a whole lot about sport karate, you're curious, drop those general questions in the comments as well. We're going to be responding live here. So don't be shy. Drop those comments down below. And for that audience that maybe has never been to the Diamond Nationals, I do want to talk about the atmosphere at Diamonds and everything about Diamonds because it is truly unique. It's unlike any other tournament in terms of the, I guess, aura that you feel when you're at Diamonds, right? So I'll start with a simple question here. What's your favorite thing about Diamonds? If you could pick out just one thing about Diamonds, what's your favorite?
Ooh, just one, or can I give 2?
You can give 2.
Okay. Well, I hope it's the same this year because it's been like this, for as long as I could remember being a black belt. But Mr. Carnahan is very nice and gives us 7x7 rings instead of 6x6. The rings are always bigger at Diamonds, and Diamond, for me personally, I upgrade my forms at US Open and I upgrade my forms for Diamond. So that extra space is really helpful. We're talking about, adjusting your forms and game planning with like trick combos. I've always been a fan of not traveling and using all the space in the ring, but having that extra kind of like space, boundaries, so that you don't go out of the ring it's like really helpful to people who trick a lot because it just makes you feel a little bit better that you're not going to just like run off into the end of the ring and like hit somebody. And like, I never have to worry about that at Diamond. So that's something that I'm, I appreciate what he did there. And I hope this year it's the same thing. But if we're talking about the aura of Diamond Nationals, something that I do miss, not being in the junior division anymore is that the runoffs have always been, crazy. There have been several videos that have gone viral. I actually think one of your students, Jackson, I can't remember his name, but it was one of his forms. He did bow. He was like really Small.
Covino Catello, one of our competitive edge guys. I think he trained with Reed for his bow form. But yeah, I mean, Savino was on competitive edge. He's great.
Yeah, his video went viral from Diamonds. It's like the place to upgrade your form. So everyone's just kind of waiting around the ring to see what the hype is about. So the runoffs at Diamond Nationals is definitely something that you do not want to miss, because it is where it goes down in the ring. Everyone wants to get on that stage for that diamond ring. So everyone, just throws their hardest forms there. So that's one of my favorite things about Diamond Nationals.
And that's exactly what my answer was going to be. By far, the best thing about Diamond Nationals is the runoffs, right? And actually, I like what you said about having the bigger rings, because as somebody who doesn't trick nor fight, that's never really impacted me. Tyreek Saint was tuning into the show last week, fighter for Top 10 USA, and he mentioned he had a question about ring size and what my thoughts were about, should rings be bigger or whatever. So that's one question that I've got for any point fighters tuning in. Have you guys noticed a difference having the 7x7 instead of the 6x6 when you fight at Diamonds? And do you like it or not? So go ahead. Love to see some discussion down in the comments section amongst the point fighters that are tuning in. But to go back to the runoffs, Diamond Nationals junior runoffs, as Philip Brumet is pointing out in the comments, and says he can still feel the energy from the boys' 14-17 runoffs, 2019 Diamonds. There's nothing like it. Like, I've been in those runoffs. I've won those runoffs in traditional forms, weapons, and CMX weapons, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. That is like the most electric atmosphere. And that brings me to another little interesting topic that I wanted to bring up. It's got me thinking when I was kind of planning how we were going to go through the show here. What are the best atmospheres in sport karate? Like across the entire NASCA circuit, or maybe even going to WACO or other leagues that you've competed in. What are your, if you've got a top 5, what are your handful of favorite places to compete at? I prepared for this. So if you want me to go first, I can.
Yeah, let's switch it up, Jackson. You go first this time.
All right. So I put them in order. Okay. So number 5 for the best atmospheres in sport karate competition. This is for forms and weapons. For forms and weapons. Fighting, it's totally different. For forms and weapons, I've got Irish Open when it's in the fighting room. Okay, now hear me out. So Irish Open in recent years has been putting us on the second floor in a forms and weapons only room. So it's just a bunch of forms and weapons people watching each other do forms and weapons. Still a good atmosphere because you get a European crowd that doesn't get to see us American competitors often. And so we typically get really good crowd reaction there, and that's always great. The last form that I ran before COVID was an Irish Open form that I got that kind of cool moment with, the European fans cheering and everything. But before they had the separate room for forms and weapons, they used to just have the one mat in the middle of the huge point fighting room there. And then literally everybody that was there to watch point fighting, when somebody really good at forms and weapons was coming up, everybody's attention would turn for a moment towards that form. And it just made it that much more electric of a situation, right? And I think that fighters can feel that when they're in the Irish Open final, right? And they're in that center ring and everybody's crowding around. There were some forms and weapons routines, Irish Open probably 4 or 5 years ago, that started to get that type of feel. So I missed that. That comes in at number 5. The rest I'll try to make them a little bit quicker. Number 4, Quebec Open, the old stage. The new stage looks more professional on camera. It's got the awesome big screens in the background, the LEDs, all that. David Bostonet and crew have done an excellent job with that night show now. But the crowd that we would get in the old arena, literally, I was on Quebec some years when it had that dance floor stage that weren't even mats. Mm-hmm. And they would fill out that university arena. It was like a track and field arena, and they would have people up in the second deck, a whole bunch of college kids having a good time watching karate. They didn't know anything about karate. They just came to watch the tournament, right? And those were some of the best atmospheres to run forms in. And it was a similar setup. You still got stage lights. It wasn't an LED screen. You got a big projector screen in the back. The announcer yelling things in French, right? Calling enough point, enough, if you were winning, right? So Quebec Open, the old stage, comes in at number 4. Number 3, I've got Diamonds runoffs because of how electric that is. And then number 2, I've got Diamond stage. The reason I put Diamond Stage above Diamond's runoffs is because, number one, there's more on the line. You're actually going for the ring at that point, right? But number two, Diamond's crowd is one of the most interactive crowds there is, right? When like all of Mr. Carnahan's like national karate crew gets all like the reserve seating around the stage and they're all having a good time. They all love sport karate, so they go hard. Whether it's forms, weapons, point fighting, doesn't matter. They're cheering. I remember Diamonds was the first tournament I ever made stage at back in 2008. And I remember like going from that little back warm-up room and then like peeking outside to like see the crowd. Full house, standing room only. They were doing the wave, which you never see at sport karate tournaments. It felt like a football game. You know what I mean? So that like Diamond's crowd is really, really good. Maybe not the same arena like you have at a Quebec Open, but the crowd is always really, really good at Diamonds. And then number one, I'm going to go, and I mean, I'm biased because I love the U.S. Open, but U.S. Open stage and a caveat with international crowd. Like I remember some years at US Open where like Team Venezuela had a whole section, Team South Africa had like an entire row of the arena, right? And in those US Opens, back before the show was so long, now the US Open night show is like 5 hours altogether when you put all of the pre-divisions and then the actual ESPN divisions and all that, right? When the show was shorter, it was all happening in like 2 hours. You would get literally everybody that attended the tournament cram into that one ballroom, as many rows back as the eye can see. And then obviously you've got the ESPN boom cameras and everything swirling around, and that creates a whole different feel. So that's my top five. Irish Open when it's in the fighting room, Quebec Open on the old stage, Diamonds runoffs, Diamond stage, US Open stage. So given that background and what I think, my 5 favorite atmospheres, maybe just give us 2 or 3 of yours, or if you've got a top 5, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I have 5. I definitely have some top ones. I never got to go to the Irish Open, so I can't say I know what that's like, but I'm sure it's pretty hype. And I wish that I have gone. Maybe I'll go, if it happens next year, because it's usually in February. So hopefully I get to go next year. I definitely agree with you on the Quebec old stage. And yes, I did compete when it was like that hard top. That was scary because there was no mats. And if you crash on that thing, it was going to hurt. I actually do remember one time.
Once.
Really?
Yeah, I had one bow form where I had a knee, like I'd spin around on my knees and like do a punch. And I went to spin around on my knees and I like totally fell over. Because I slipped on like the like dance floor type feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that was actually the same year about what I'm gonna say. When I did my round off with my chucks, my hand like slipped, my hand slipped and my wrist like turned, and I ended up doing like a round off of one hand like this and my wrist like this. I made it over, but it might have been the same year and the same division because we were probably competing against each other during that time. But yeah, but the good thing about like that whole era was the crowd was exactly what you just said. Very big. The seats were filled. There was like not one seat open. I remember like, I don't know if I'm making this up. I hope I'm not making this up. But one year I want to say it was like 7,000 people in the crowd. Does that sound like?
Yeah, I heard that number. Yeah, it was thousands of people in that crowd that one.
Yeah, like it was crazy, guys. Like it was like you just can't explain that feeling. And it's like a really nerve-wracking feeling. By the same time, it gives you that like extra energy. And not to mention, I mean, I think they still do have the catwalk, but like that catwalk was crazy because it was like a pretty long like walk from the
long walk.
Yeah. It wasn't like a short walk up. This was like you had to take several steps to get to the ring. So it's just like that leading up to it. It's like, oh my God, I'm really gonna do this. Oh my God, like I'm really gonna throw my phone right now. And it's like dark and there's like smoke and the whole shebang going on with that. So that is definitely one of my top top auras and atmospheres to compete in. I do like the Diamond Nationals runoffs, like we talked about that, but I'm kind of out of that scene right now. So but as a junior, that definitely takes top right there. The Diamond Nationals stage, like we've just been talking about, there's a lot of pressure no matter what. Even if you don't have a diamond ring, and this is not, to scare everyone going into the tournament, but there is some sort of pressure, if you really want that diamond ring, like you only get one shot when you're up there. So, unlike like all the other overall grands, you always only have one shot, but this is like one shot at your chance at getting a ring.
Right.
Only the Diamond Nationals.
That's how the majors are, right? You get one chance a year to get a Warrior Cup. You get one chance a year to get a U.S. Open. You get one chance a year to get a Diamond Ring. A lot of the others, it's an overall, so it's a big deal. But when you're, like Battle of Atlanta, Quebec Open, both big, great karate tournaments, but it's not and it's not anything that's up to the promoters or whatever. It's just the history of those events, right? Battle of Atlanta runs a great event on the level of Warrior Cup, U.S. Open, Diamonds, and same thing for Quebec Open. But the majors are the majors for a reason. There's a reason Warrior Cup is special, right? It's because it's a Warrior Cup. Diamond rings are diamond rings, and U.S. Opens are on TV, right? So I think that really it comes down to the award itself more than anything else, plus the history that goes into it and the situation that you're faced with, right? But I totally get what you're saying. You only get one chance a year to get each of those majors, and that's what makes it a really big deal, right? So we're about the halfway point of the show. Sammy, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing. I like how Diamond Nationals, the warm-up area is separate from like where the stage is. Because it's really cool when like everyone's like, oh, so-and-so's about to go. We have to rush, and then they all like, rush in and watch from the back. I think that's really cool. And that's just something that's like pretty special to Diamonds, because I always see that happening at Diamonds. Like everyone will be like kind of chilling in the back room, the warm-up area. And then as soon as, somebody goes up that really, really is looking forward to watch, everyone kind of rushes into the crowd and watches them. So you could hear like cheering from all the way in the back. So that's another really cool part about Diamonds and that whole atmosphere. But yeah, that answers.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. When you see people kind of like running from that back room out to see a form. And I remember doing it too, right? I remember being like 14 or 15 and I was on stage that night too, but running out to go see Calvin. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember those moments, so that's definitely a big part of it. Halfway point of the show, time for a shameless plug, little advertisement here. As you can see in the bottom line, we got scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now. You can get 10% off Sport Karate University, the curriculum designed by Sammy Smith and I pointed at me for Sammy Smith and I that way. Sammy Smith and I, we developed that curriculum made for martial arts students that want to learn sport karate. So if you're tuning in right now, you've never really had a chance to do much training in sport karate, you want to start getting into tournaments, you want to see what that world is like, check out Sport Karate University. The link is down below, shop.blackbeltmag.com. You want to use code SKU10 at checkout. You'll get 10% off any of your purchases for Sport Karate University, whether it's the complete program, nunchucks, bow, tricking. We've got a performance minor, and it's all college, so you got majors and minors and all that. Go check it out. You won't regret it. So shameless plug there. I'm going to leave that little bottom line there for a while so y'all can see it. Go get that discount. It's already affordable to begin with, but this makes it even more affordable. So again, SKU10, shop.blackbeltmag.com. Click on online courses, and you'll find Sport Karate University. Commercial over. Now we're going to move on to, we kind of did that top 5 of like what your favorite atmospheres are. We've talked about strategy and about being prepared for certain types of competitors. So that brings me to, we'll start in particular with your career, right? We'll make another list. Who would you say your top 3 to 5 competitors that you've ever competed against are? And I'll preface this by saying, there's a couple different ways you can define this, right? Like you can define this as the competitors who gave you the hardest time trying to beat them. You can define this as the people you've competed against that probably rank the highest all time, meaning maybe you weren't very good when you competed against them, so it wasn't really fair, but this was an all-time great competitor, so therefore they made the list, right? So I'll let you take it from there and take it whatever direction you want to. Who would you say are some of your top competitors you've ever faced?
Okay, well, first let me say I'm very grateful for everybody who I've competed against throughout the years, because everyone has contributed in some way and pushed me in some way. So I just want to put that out there first before I start being very selective with who I'm about to say. Well, technically, I did compete against my instructor, Matt Emmig, at a local tournament before in a trick battle. I don't know if that counts, but that was really cool. I don't know if anyone really knows about that. It was a, what we weren't doing forms. It was a trick battle, and I think it was like a sympathy point, honestly, that they gave to me. I don't know if I actually deserved the point, because all I remember doing is like aerials in the circle because I couldn't really do many tricks at the time. And somehow during that round, I beat Matt's trick pass, which I don't even know what he did, but definitely was harder than that. So I feel like maybe it was like the cuteness factor that I got because I was like a little girl. Like I think I was like 9 competing against Matt at the time. So it was definitely a sympathy point, but I'll take it. If we're talking about something like that, I do have to say that was a pretty cool moment to compete against Matt. As far as, my competition career, I honestly feel like 2 of the most important people that really helped me out the most was you and Kenzie. Kind of along the lines of what we talked about earlier in the live stream, like, you really pushed me in the junior divisions. I got a few overall wins on you, but you're always there, and you along with myself are very consistent. I feel like that's where my consistency comes with, from just competing against you, because you're always hitting your forms. All your releases, you always caught them. Here and there, just like anyone else, there might be a few slip ups, but you knew Jackson was going to hit his form. You knew he was going to stick everything. You knew what you were getting yourself into competing against him. So that kind of forced me to be super consistent with my stuff, which again is something that I think I'm known for nowadays, is being super consistent. So because of that, my, kind of what we were talking about before with style, this is the way I am because of competing against you. And of course, as you've mentioned, and probably everybody who knows, the rivalry between me and Kenzie Emery, like, it's pretty cool because I don't know if I've talked about this before, but when Matt, Mark, and Sammy Vasquez were competing against each other, it was called The War. And I almost feel like Kenzie and I had like The War point 2 or part 2, your 2.0, just kind of along the same lines. Because everybody knew Sammy and Kenzie were going to go head to head. What are they going to do? Is she going to do a different trick? Is she going to stick her form? Everyone, it's a really cool feeling when you just see people just crowd around the ring. And that's something I really hope kind of comes back, because I feel like that doesn't happen so much. But, Diamond Nationals, the runoffs, it does happen there. But I would like to see that happen for just plain old divisions, because everyone wanted to see what was going to happen between Kenzie and I. So, and yeah, she's a great tricker. Her power is there. Her cleanliness is there. Like all the check boxes, check, check, check. So it really kind of forced me to become the most perfect competitor I can be because of her. And we competed against each other for a very long time, all like since 2007, I want to say. So pretty much my whole entire, competition career so far has been against her. And, if I wasn't against her in the division, well, I was against her in the runoff. So there was never like a time where we weren't competing against each other. So yeah, I definitely will put Matt in the trick battle, there. I'll keep him there. And then you and Kenzie, I do have to say, have been, my favorite people to compete against. Other people like Tyler Weaver, who I've competed against, who was my teammate at several points during my career, has been pretty cool to compete against. And just some other people that I can't really think of off the top of my head, but those are like the major people that I would say.
Well, first and foremost, thank you. That means a lot to me. I think that I speak for all competitors that there's nothing more humbling than hearing that you were one of your top competitors' favorite competitors to compete against. You know what I mean? So that means a lot to me. And I'll say the same about you. I think that in the juniors especially, I can't think of many times that I made it to the Grand and it wasn't me, you, and Amanda. Like it could have been like 75 or 80% of the time. That weapons Grand was my CMX bow form, your CMX Chuck's form, and Amanda's traditional bow form. Mm-hmm. And that's how it was for 4 or 5 years. That's how it was. So you guys definitely pushed me. Obviously, when it was Mackenzie, she pushed me as well. So the three of you, Mackenzie, yourself, and Amanda, were the top three female competitors that I've had to compete against in the Grands as a junior. And then, of course, I had wars in those boys' runoffs. Everybody in those runoffs was hard to beat. You had Tyler Weaver, you had Reed and Cole Presley. Cole and I have been the same age. Well, we've been the same age since he was born, right? Anyway, but since he started competing, he's always been in the same division, so he was always a great challenge for me in the ring. Obviously, Reed was older, so in runoffs it was Reed, right? If there wasn't one Presley, there was another I had to be against. Tyler, of course, gave me some great battles. Austin Crane, this is one that a lot of people don't realize because Austin he had two separate primes. He had his prime when he was 13, and then he didn't compete for a while, and then he came back and had a second prime as an adult. But he had a couple of seasons there in 16 to 17, I think, before he went adult. And so, I grew up watching Austin Crane win weapons overalls with his comp form. And then, when he was kind of out of it for a little bit, that's when I started to get good, and then he came back. And so when I was first trying to get on Paul Mitchell, Austin was the Paul Mitchell guy that I had to try to beat to show that I deserved a spot on the team, right? So Austin in the 14 to 17 division, we had some great battles. And then kind of your situation is self-explanatory in the adults. Mine is too. I mean, the me, Reed, and Cole divisions in the adult division were always some of the best. And, of course, there were others too over the years, and I agree with the same sentiment. Every competitor I've ever competed against, I have the utmost respect for because as an athlete, we're nothing without competitors, right? You're never going to be considered great if you don't compete against others who are great. And I think that's a mentality that every competitor should have. So I have the utmost respect for anybody that I've ever competed against. And what's funny is I actually competed against Matt as well in non-solo NASCA division format. So we did an adrenaline battle that I beat him in, and then we were in sync weapons together when I was partnered up with Kyle Montagna. And mine and Kyle's form won a division at U.S. Open that beat he and Danny Edkins' sync form. But I don't really count either of those because, the trick battle was head-to-head, but it was a trick battle. And, sync was a NASCA division, but it was sync. It wasn't head-to-head, right? And I've said on the podcast before, in my opinion, Matt Emig is the greatest extreme martial artist of all time, bar none, right? So I have a ton of respect for Matt. I mean, he completely innovated nunchucks. He was, in my opinion, the best tricker in the world. Probably he was the last best tricker in the world not named Mike Guthrie, in my opinion. Maybe Danny Graham for a couple of years. Maybe it was Matt, and then there was a couple of years of Danny Graham, and then it was Guthrie, and still is Guthrie, right? But in my opinion, when tricking was really getting big, Matt was one of the first goats of tricking. You know what I'm saying? So utmost respect for Matt. Sammy, I agree with you. Utmost respect for everybody we've ever competed against. I think we both wish that we would have gotten more chances to compete against some of those legends that came before us, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That's Kalman, Mark, Rudy. For you, that's, Caitlin and Lauren and so on and so forth. Caitlin and Lauren, in fact, two people that have been able to mentor you. Lauren as a performance weapons coach at Paul Mitchell. You trained privately under Caitlin for a while. So, those are cool opportunities that if we could turn back the clock, we wish we could have. But,
for sure.
That's not how it goes. So now we're going to move into talking about this upcoming Diamonds. And by the way, anybody tuning in, feel free, drop those comments. I'm keeping an eye on it. So if you've got any questions for us, go ahead, drop those in the comments down below. We're getting towards the later part of the show here. So if you've got those questions, you better make sure that you ask them and you're not too late on those. So now I want to shift to talking about Diamonds this year. We've talked a ton about your career, and we've talked a little bit about my career. But now let's talk about the divisions you're not competing in, and I'm not competing in, so I'm not competing in Diamonds, right? What are your predictions for Diamonds? Do you have any bold predictions? We'll keep it with forms and weapons. I'm a huge fighting fan, but I know you don't always watch the fighting as much, right? But maybe with the men's forms and weapons divisions and then the juniors, do you have any bold predictions for what we're going to see at Diamonds?
I don't want to say the wrong thing. Oh man, Jackson, you're hitting me with
a bold prediction.
These hard-hitting questions. Oh, Okay. How about this? You answer first, and then I'll answer after.
Of course. Okay, so I think if we're going with the men's divisions and the juniors, right? Juniors is stacked. Like the junior division is completely stacked. There's 6 different boys that could win the 14 to 17 boys weapons game, right? Our competitive edge guys are going to show up. Ben Jones, Dawson Holt. Those 2 alone are crazy. You got Esteban Tremblay. We're still uncertain if he's going to be able to try to make it from Canada or not with the COVID-related travel restrictions. But when Esteban's on, he's one of the best in the world. Obviously, Mason Bamba from Top 10 USA. Philip Roubaix, who's been in the chat, he's been making a name for himself with his comma form. Riley Tracy, who made it to the U.S. Open stage with his double bow. So 14 to 17 weapons is completely stacked. If you could gamble in sport karate, you'd be foolish to bet on 14 to 17 weapons because anybody could win it. It's a stupid bet. You should never bet on 14 to 17 weapons. I digress. And really, that's true through the 13 and under boys and girls as well. And 13 and under boys, Michael Molina, Dax Howland are both electric with their bow form. Zeke Gomez with his nunchuck form. He recently got picked up by the American national team. He's been looking great. So 13 and under boys is stacked. Harold Lerner from Straight Up looks great. And then you go over to the girls. Obviously, there's a great battle down there between Isabella Nicolai, Avery Presley, Cody Molina. That's a stacked division. So really, amongst those juniors, there's not any good bets to make because they're all so good and also even with each other. And I'm biased towards my students and my competitive edge people. So it wouldn't even be fair for me to make a prediction because I'm going to say my students are my competitive edge people, right? I will say if you look at 14 to 17 girls traditional forms, Maddie Kenaway from K-Talk seems to be quite frankly, running away with that division the past few tournaments. So watching 14 to 17 girls traditional forms could be interesting because Maddie Kenaway has been a very dominant force there. And then on the boys' side, we have Caio da Silva, who was at the U.S. Open. So it'll be interesting to see if Caio makes an appearance at Diamond. His traditional form is dominant as well on the 14-17 boys' side of things. So juniors gets really tough to call in a lot of those divisions. In the traditional divisions, it's a little bit easier to kind of see, okay, these people have the best chance. But really, that's a good thing because that means that the future of our sport's in good hands because we've got so many great young competitors that are going to be making their way up through these ranks, right? And then in the adult men, right, I mean, this is tough. Okay, so we'll start with an easier one. The easier one would be men's traditional forms because it comes down to like Ariel and Mason. So Ariel Torres, Mason Stowell. They're both in Moscow right now competing at the Karate One Premier League event, right? So it comes down to are they going to make it to Diamonds a week after being in Moscow because they're automatically 2 favorites if they're at Diamonds, right? You also have Joey Castro in the mix, who's not in Moscow right now, but he's, been somebody that's up there at the level of Mason Ariel. So it really comes down to who shows up, how you make your predictions. And then we get to CMX Weapons, which is the division that I am vacating heading into Diamonds. And man, from U.S. Open, obviously I was competing against a brand new group of people than what I'd ever really competed against before. Connor Chastain, Alex Mancias, Jake Presley, among others. With Jake, it'll be interesting if he's back to running CMX Weapons. At U.S. Open, he obviously just did traditional weapons. That's what he did on stage. He looked great. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes back with CMX. It'll be interesting to see if Aiden Considine is at Diamonds and if he comes back with that CMX bow form of his. And then the common guys in that division were great. Alex Mancias, one of our newest members of Paul Mitchell. He proved that he is not just a fighter. He proved that he can do both by making it to the U.S. Open stage and representing himself and the team very, very well. And then Connor Chastain, who won the weapons overall at the Battle of Atlanta, one of the recent big NASCAR tournaments. He's going to be on home turf, right? He's from Wisconsin, but all the Wisconsin crowd's going to be there in Minnesota, right, for Team Infinity. So Connor Chastain might have a little bit of home field advantage there. But if he wins, it won't be because of home field advantage. It'll be because he's that good, because he is that good. He's one of the top common competitors in the game right now. So there's a lot of young talent in that men's division. Oh, and then I was thinking Bo and Chuck's Danny Etkin. Danny Etkin, if he's at Diamonds with his nunchuck form, is automatically a role player in that division, among others. I'm not naming everybody because, then it's not even fair, right? So, yeah, men's weapons is really, really interesting because there's so many Paul Mitchell guys in it. All I'm going to say is as long as Paul Mitchell wins, that's all I really care about. Outside of that, as long as it's something wearing black and white, that's what matters to me. And then CMX form, I think Danny is probably the favorite because of his level of tricking and the fact that he's won that men's CMX forms overall time and time again before. But you've got great competition in there as well, right? Alex can run a good open hand form. Connor Chastain's in that forms division. And then you've got Rashad, who's in the chat here. I just noticed. I'm glad Rashad commented because that reminded me of him, right? Rashad, we never know what he's going to do. So Rashad could come out there and do something crazy and go on a run and wind up winning it overall. He won both the CMX forms and weapons at AmeriKick. So who knows? Maybe he tries to keep that momentum rolling and do it again at Diamonds. So I guess I didn't really make any bold predictions. I just kind of said everybody would win. But,
See how hard it is? It's really hard to say this person, because you're right, Jackson. There's tons of very talented people, and literally anybody can take it. So that's what makes it so exciting to watch. And I guess that's why everyone wants to watch the Diamond Nationals, runoffs. I do have to say that I am excited. I hope that he competes at Diamonds. I am excited to see Cody Leck versus Danny Etkin because I think that's a great matchup in forms because the tricking level, I think they're going to push each other in the tricks. And I don't know. I just think that's going to be really exciting to watch for the form. So I hope that he competes because he did move up to the adults at AmeriKick. So he has to compete at the adults at Diamonds. So that's, one thing about the forms that I'm looking forward to seeing. You're right with Connor and Alex as far as commas go. They're both throwing like crazy tricks. And then again, what you said about Rashad, you never know what he's going to, do. So who knows? We might see a broom. We might see commas. We might see a spear. We don't know. Maybe all three at the same time. Who knows? Just kidding. I don't think he's going to do that. But yeah. And then as far as the juniors go, see, I have like a lot of students. So it's hard for me to say exactly kind of like what you said. Like you don't want to say the wrong thing, but what can I say? My student Bella Nicolai is like super consistent, so I really hope that she can pull off a win. But she has great competition as well. Cody Molina, who is your student, they go against each other, and Avery. So it's really tough. But yeah, I'm rooting for Bella. She's my student, so I hope that she pulls off a win. And Michael Molina, I hope that he gets a win as a junior. That would be really cool. I always see the two of them like working really hard. So, it's just gonna be anybody's game in the ring. But let's see. Do I have anything else? I don't know.
We were talking about the adults, and I mentioned Connor and Infinity and Home Field Advantage. Infinity's got several great competitors in the juniors as well. In that girls' ring, you've also got Alex Gross. Carter Reifowitz is one of my students that's in that boys division, right? He's making a name for himself too. So there's a ton of talent around, especially that 13 and under division, then moving up to that 14 and 17 division. What's going to be really exciting on the boys' side of things in particular is when these current 14 to 17-year-old boys move up and meet these young adults that are in the division. They're all 18, 19, 20 right now, right? And then you've got a division that's stacked all the way from the guy who will be the oldest, which will be Danny at that point, all the way down to those guys moving in like Ben Jones, Dawson Holt, Mason Bubba, etc. That's going to be ridiculously stacked. And that's an extremely even level of talent. That I can't wait to watch. I cannot wait to sit back and have a look at that. And hey, who knows? Maybe compete against all of it a few times. We'll see what happens.
Very true.
Any other thoughts on that, Sammy? Or
are we still on predictions or no?
If you have another prediction, go for it. Or if you guys have predictions down in the comments, let's see those predictions.
Yeah, come on, guys. Like, put your questions down there. We want to answer more. But
this conversation, I have not planned this, by the way. So if this is a terrible idea, let me know. But this conversation got me thinking, right? And I mentioned how we don't gamble in sport karate, but if we did, right? What if hear me out, not gambling. But what if there was a fantasy sport karate, right?
I knew you were gonna say that.
What if there was like a buy-in, right? And we did it like before each big tournament. So like a week before Diamonds, we put it together and we said like, okay, we're gonna do a big draft. The first 20 people that want to be in, it's like a $25 buy-in, and then whoever accumulates the most points just takes the prize money, right? And they can do whatever they want with it, right? But the way that you would have to arrange it is it'd be like, okay, you get one men's weapons competitor, one men's forms competitor, one women's this, one women's that. You get 2 juniors, 2 youth. You get a lightweight fighter, a heavyweight fighter, a female fighter, a team fight, right? And so you get to pick like one from each like major subcategory of division. Divisional win is worth like 5 points, second place 4 points, third place 3 points, and then so on. A runoff win would be 10 points, and then an overall win would be like 15 points. You see what I'm saying? And then at the end of it, you have somebody add it all up and see like who the fantasy Diamond Nationals winner would be, right? Like who could call it best. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I just made that up. That's off the top of my head. That might be a terrible idea. But if you think it's a good idea, drop it down in the comments. Maybe we get something like that going. I know that we do have some cross-podcast rivalry because we've got an inside scoop with Alex and Jeff over at Martial Arts Internet Network. We've got a fantasy football league that I am currently undefeated in, by the way. That's been going. So Alex and Jeff, if you're watching this, you guys are going down. Just know that. But reactions to a fantasy sport karate idea, maybe we should make that happen.
If that's the case, I hope people are definitely betting on me for Diamonds.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I guess technically if you're competing, that'd be an interesting rule. Do we allow competitors to play in the fantasy or do we not, right? Because if you're in professional sports, I guess you can play fantasy if you're in pro sports. You just can't gamble on your own games, right? Yeah, that's how that works. You can't gamble on your own game, but you can have a fantasy football league. So maybe we'll do that. Let competitors jump in on it. We'll have people trying to draft themselves. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So if you like that idea, drop it down in the comments. Let me know. Maybe we'll make something like that happen. Real talk, though, something that is actually happening. After Diamond Nationals, there will be another update of the Black Belt Magazine official World Sport Karate Rankings, a unified ranking system that takes into account all major sport karate tournaments from a variety of leagues. Diamond Nationals is clearly a tournament of enough prestige and gravity that the effects or the results of that tournament are going to have a strong effect on those rankings. So it'll take some time for the committee to get the results from Diamonds and kind of analyze everything and compare who won what to who won whatever. But there will be a Black Belt Magazine rankings update that will come after the Diamond Nationals. So stay tuned to that. That will definitely go live online on our website, to be determined if that's going to go up in a print issue of the magazine. But obviously that would be the goal. But definitely online rankings update coming after the Diamond Nationals, to be announced how long it will take for the committee to meet and get everything together and get those rankings published. But it is going to be happening. So for everybody competing at the Diamonds, make sure that you get there and you show up because if you want to see your name on those rankings, Diamonds might be your opportunity to do so if you take home one of those rings. So Sammy, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. This is our first live episode of the podcast on the Black Belt Magazine page. So thank you to all of our Black Belt Magazine audience that's tuning in. If you've got more questions or if you want to continue the discussion, feel free to go ahead and do that down in the comments. Little reminder, if you want to check out Sport Karate University taught by yours truly and Sammy Smith, go ahead and head on over to shop.blackbeltmag.com. Online courses, Sport Karate University. Use code SKU10 at checkout. Sammy, any last words?
Well, this was very fun. These definitely were hard-hitting questions. I'm probably going to be thinking about it for the rest of the night. But I'm just honestly just, kind of all jokes aside, I'm really looking forward to seeing what everybody is going to be throwing next week. I've been super excited to compete. I've been, counting down the days. We have like 1 week to go. It's kind of time is almost going too slow. I just want to be at the tournament already. But I'm really, 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 really excited because this is the last major tournament of the season. We didn't really have the most full season, I would say. So, I feel like people are going to be throwing extra hard at this tournament. So I'm really excited to see all the talented competitors, and yeah, let's all put on a show and let's try to make history.
Hey, I like it. And hey, that was a very professional way to put it, but I'll just say I am pumped. Let's go. Like, I cannot wait to be at Diamonds. I cannot wait to feel that energy again. I cannot wait to see everybody in their divisions, then ultimately up in the nighttime finals. Competitive edge, all you guys, best of luck. The team that I coach alongside Reed and Cole Presley, you guys are going to go out there and kill it. All of my brothers and sisters on Paul Mitchell, that includes you, Sammy. You guys are going to go out there and kill it. I bleed black and white till the day I die. JPM forever, baby. So let's go put on a show. And then also special shout out to Gabrielle Dunn. You're going to do awesome too, baby. It's my fiance. But anyway, so Sammy, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I really appreciate it. You're always welcome to come on the show. I think you've been on the show more than anybody else as a guest. So we're going to be doing this again. Keep that discussion going on down in the comments, y'all. But for this week, I'm Jackson Rudolph, and that was episode 80 of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. We'll see you next time.